Commuting does allow you to live almost anywhere in the country and sometimes all around the world, but it takes days and days off of your schedule. The schedules are really hard. You don't always have the flexibility or certainty that you're going to make it on certain flights to be able to make it to work on time.
Most people think airline pilots live the dream. Six-figure salaries, exotic layovers, and the prestige of commanding hundreds of lives at 35,000 feet. But here's the truth that almost nobody outside aviation talks about. Some pilots earn so little in their first jobs that they actually qualify for food stamps. Others work 16-hour days but only get paid for 8 of them. And despite the image of luxury, many spend their nights in overcrowded crash pads, sharing tiny apartments with strangers just to afford living near their base. The glamorous lifestyle you've been sold is often nothing more than a marketing myth, and the real life of a pilot can be exhausting, lonely, and brutally underpaid. In fact, many pilots openly admit that there are aspects of their career they genuinely dislike, and in some cases, even hate. These frustrations are not just about the occasional long day. They stem from systemic issues in the industry, grueling schedules, financial struggles, and the psychological toll of a profession that looks a lot more glamorous from the outside than it feels on the inside. One of the most common misconceptions about being a pilot is the money. People assume that as soon as someone graduates from flight school, they step into a 6-figure salary and never have to worry about finances again. The truth is starkly different. Becoming a pilot in the first place is extremely expensive. Flight training and licensing often cost between $80,000 and $120,000, depending on the country and the pathway chosen. Most aspiring pilots must take out large loans to cover these costs. When they finally secure their first job, often as a first officer at a regional airline, their salary can be as low as $40,000 to $60,000 a year. At that level of pay, many struggle to even cover their student loan repayments.
As a low-ad pilot, it is always going to be difficult to get a job. I mean, that first job in aviation is absolutely vital.
Let alone live a comfortable lifestyle. The financial strain is one of the first rude awakenings that crushes the glamorous image many young aviators held. Over time, pay does increase, especially for those who make it to major airlines and eventually captain positions. But the road there is long, competitive, and unpredictable. Another major frustration is how pilots are actually paid. Unlike many professions, pilots don't earn money for all the hours they're technically at work. Instead, they are usually paid based on block time. That is, from the moment the aircraft's brakes are released at departure until the moment they are applied again after landing. This means that hours spent doing pre-flight checks, briefing with crew, waiting out delays, or sitting in the cockpit with passengers boarding are unpaid. On a long-haul trip, a pilot's official duty time may look like 11 hours, but from the moment they wake up, travel to the airport, conduct walkarounds, and finally finish the post-flight paperwork, their day could stretch to 15 or even 17 hours. Yet only a portion of that is compensated. This mismatch between effort and earnings is something many pilots quietly resent. Flight schedules themselves are another huge source of dissatisfaction. While the idea of seeing the world is appealing at first, pilots quickly learn that they often don't have the freedom or time to enjoy their destinations. Layovers can be short, sometimes less than 24 hours, and usually involve catching up on rest to prepare for the next leg rather than exploring a city. In the beginning, staying in a tropical paradise or a bustling city feels like a perk, but after flying to the same place 6, 8, or 10 times, the novelty wears off. Many pilots end up treating their layovers as temporary homes, developing small routines like going for a run, eating at the same nearby restaurant, or simply staying in the hotel to recover from jet lag.
What people often don't know is pilots get paid via block time. That means chocks off, chocks on, brakes off, brake on. But a long-haul flying day can be much longer than that.
The life of constant travel often turns into a monotonous cycle that leaves little room for personal fulfillment. Jet lag itself is a hated enemy. Pilots frequently cross multiple time zones, disrupting their circadian rhythms and making consistent sleep nearly impossible. A pilot may find themselves waking up at midnight body time to prepare for a departure in Asia, only to fly overnight and arrive in Europe during local daylight hours, where they have to stay awake to avoid crashing into an unhealthy sleep cycle. Chronic sleep disruption leads to fatigue, which is one of the most dangerous issues in aviation. Regulations mandate rest periods, but fatigue accumulates in ways that are difficult to manage. Some pilots describe their sleep schedules as permanently weird.
I think for most professional pilots, you're exactly right. Flying an airplane is not stressful. It's more of a release, and it's our time to disconnect, and we get to do what we're trained to do and what we love to do. Yeah, the sleep schedule is rough.
With their bodies never fully adjusting to any time zone. Sleep deprivation not only affects performance in the cockpit, but also personal health and mood, which further erodes job satisfaction. Family life is another area where pilots feel the sting of their career choice. Unlike many jobs that allow weekends or holidays off, pilots often work during the times most people are celebrating. Birthdays, anniversaries, Christmas, New Year's Eve, all can be missed because a pilot is halfway around the world. Junior pilots in particular get stuck with the least desirable schedules, meaning they're more likely to work nights, weekends, and holidays while senior colleagues secure the better rosters. Over time, this can put significant strain on relationships and family bonds. Many pilots admit they hate missing important moments in their children's lives, from school plays to graduations. Some find themselves in crash pads, shared apartments near airports, just to rest between trips instead of spending precious time at home. Job stability is another harsh reality of the aviation industry. When times are good, airlines expand rapidly and pilots are in high demand. But aviation is highly sensitive to economic downturns, fuel prices, and global crises. During the COVID-19 pandemic, thousands of pilots lost their jobs almost overnight, with many never returning to the profession. Airlines collapse with surprising regularity. Names like Air Berlin or Compass Airlines serve as reminders that even established carriers can vanish, leaving employees stranded. This cyclical nature of the industry makes long-term career planning stressful. A pilot may think they have a 30-year career ahead at one company, only to be laid off 3 years in due to factors completely out of their control. That constant uncertainty is one of the most disliked aspects of the profession. Another frustration pilots often voice is how the excitement of flying diminishes over time. For a new pilot, taxiing a large jet across an airport, conducting checklists, or handling takeoffs and landings is exhilarating. But after thousands of hours, much of the job becomes routine, punctuated by long periods of monitoring autopilot systems. While attention must always remain high, after all, lives are at stake, pilots admit that flying can become monotonous, almost like sitting in traffic but with a 230-ton machine. They don't have the luxury of zoning out or entertaining themselves. Vigilance is mandatory. This combination of boredom with high responsibility can be mentally draining, and it explains why many describe flying as simultaneously dull and stressful. Environmental factors also add to the dislike. Pilots often encounter rough runways, crosswinds, mountainous airports, and freezing conditions that make flying difficult. Strong winds in particular are a constant annoyance, delaying flights and creating turbulent journeys. Some airports are infamous among pilots, such as LaGuardia in New York, nicknamed La Garbage by some in the industry, for its cramped runways and stressful operations. Airports in mountainous regions are also widely disliked because of the tricky approaches they require. These conditions keep pilots on edge and add to the physical and mental stress of the job.
Now, something specific to the airlines and jet flying in general is that visual approaches are much more challenging than in slower aircraft in the general aviation world.
Delays are universally hated in aviation, and pilots are no exception. They are frustrating not just because they disrupt plans, but because pilots often aren't paid for the waiting time. A 2-hour delay sitting at the gate means passengers are irritated, crew members are fatigued, and the pilot is stuck managing the situation without compensation. These delays eat into their rest periods, creating a ripple effect that makes subsequent flights harder. What might seem like a minor inconvenience to passengers can translate into hours of lost rest and additional stress for the crew. Even the perks people assume pilots love are overrated. For instance, pilots technically get free or heavily discounted flights, but many don't use them as much as people imagine. Spending so much time on airplanes for work makes the thought of boarding another flight on their day off unappealing. For them, the cabin feels more like the office than a luxury experience. Likewise, crew lounges and crash pads, which might sound like relaxing perks, are often cramped, noisy, and uncomfortable, hardly the glamorous spaces people picture. The profession also demands a level of vigilance outside of work hours that few outsiders consider. Pilots must adhere to strict rules about rest, alcohol consumption, and even certain medications before flights. Something as simple as taking cold medicine could disqualify them from flying if it impairs performance. This constant self-monitoring creates a lifestyle where pilots can never fully switch off, even when off duty. Their personal choices are often restricted by the responsibility of their next flight. What many pilots hate most is the disconnect between the public perception of their job and the reality they live. Friends and family often imagine they are always on vacation, earning vast sums of money and living in luxury. In truth, many are exhausted, living out of suitcases and worrying about job security or debt. That gap between expectation and reality can feel isolating. At the same time, pilots recognize the immense responsibility they carry. Hundreds of lives in their hands every flight, which adds another layer of pressure to an already demanding lifestyle. Despite all these frustrations, pilots continue flying because they are passionate about aviation. They may hate the schedules, the fatigue, the financial strain in the early years, and the instability of the industry, but the act of flying itself still carries an unmatched sense of fulfillment. Greasing a smooth landing, looking out at the view from 35,000 feet, or navigating safely through difficult weather brings a sense of pride that few other jobs can replicate. Yet for anyone considering this career, it is crucial to understand that the reality is far less glamorous than the image. Being a pilot requires resilience, patience, and a willingness to endure hardships that many outside the industry never see. In the end, when pilots say they hate parts of their job, they are not rejecting flying itself, but rather the working conditions, sacrifices, and misconceptions tied to the profession. The truth is that aviation is a field full of contradictions, glorious and grueling, respected yet unstable, thrilling but often monotonous. To survive in it, pilots must embrace both the highs and the lows, knowing that while the world may admire their role, only they truly understand the cost of keeping planes safely in the sky.